Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Namaskar. You have stepped into a course that is going to change the way that you look at data. Not just how you analyze it, but also how you communicate it. My name is Nivid Desai. I serve as the Program Executive at Writing Studio IIT Gandhinagar. Welcome to Writing for Data Science. This course is at the intersection of analysis and communication. As all of us know, data analysis is not just about coding and models. It is about solving real-world problems. And that is exactly why every single thought that goes into solving those problems needs to be communicated. And not just to one audience, across multiple stakeholders. That is where this course comes in. This course prepares you with the foundations of writing, especially curated for data science. We will discuss audience analysis, critical thinking, logical reasoning, as well as storytelling that is native to data science. So join me on a journey at the intersection of numbers and narratives. I'll see you in class. Namaste, hello and welcome to Writing for Data Science. My name is Nivid Desai and we are on a journey to explore the interesting intersections between numbers and narratives. Today's lecture is part 1 of a trilogy. Before we end the course, we are going to look back at everything that we have learned and see how it makes sense in an interconnected fashion. We will see how modules talk to each other, how ideas converge and turn into something more. This is called the synthesis series because that is exactly what we are going to do. We will synthesize all the ideas that we have learnt and see them from a bird's eye view. We will see how they make sense and how they are implemented in real life scenarios. It'll also help us understand that everything that we have discussed ever since the beginning of this course is all interconnected. How? Let's find out. In today's lecture, we are going to begin with synthesizing the first 2 modules. The first module was an introduction to writing in data science, and the second module was audience analysis. These 2 modules may be different, but their outcome is similar. This lecture brings them together. The core idea is quite simple. Effective data writing happens when strong writing practices are guided by deep audience understanding. Writing provides the tools, structure, clarity, logic. And audience analysis provides the direction. It helps you dictate what matters, what to emphasize, and what to simplify. We have explored all of this in a lot of depth while exploring these modules in its entire detail. But today, we will see how these ideas are interconnected. When these 2 ideas work together, the one of the key foundational principles of writing in data science and those of audience analysis, when they work together, data becomes actionable. Let's reflect on this question for a moment. Think of a time when your message did not land. Was the problem how you wrote it or who you wrote for? Think about the pain point, the bottleneck that held you from becoming an effective communicator. It'll help you understand that many of these factors can become hindrances if not done well. Mental models are the internal maps people use to make sense of information. Writers and readers each bring one to the table. Writers have their own mental models, readers have their own. This is what a writer's mental model looks like. It has goals, it has assumptions, it has methods, and hopefully some confidence in data. While the audience's mental model, it may be complementary to the writer's one, but it may not be the same. Because oftentimes it happens that the audience's expectation and the writer's expression don't match each other. This is what the audience's mental model looks like: context, priorities, constraints, and vocabulary. How are these two connected with a causal link? In today's lecture, we will look at all of these points through the lens of causality. How are they connected? How does one point cause the other? So, in this case, if the writer's mental model is not aligned with the audience's, even accurate data can confuse or it can disengage. In this case, the audience will completely detach itself from the design of communication if that communication does not respond to their own mental models. Let's look at how we can bridge this gap as communicators. What is the interconnection of the mental models between a writer and an audience? Here's an example. A state education department in Kerala shared school performance data. Let's assume that the early drafts focused on statistical distributions. This is something that is written from a writer's mental model. However, after audience analysis, summaries highlighted schools improving fastest and what helped them do that. This is more attuned to the audience's mental model. As a result, school leaders, audiences in this case, school leaders used the insights to replicate the best practices. Here's a little exercise before we move forward. Write one sentence about the same data set, one for a fellow data student and one for a school principal. Try to look at the difference, one from a writer's mental model and the other from an audience's mental model. Think about what changed. Think about why it changed. From the introduction module, we learned that data professionals write a variety of different documents. We looked at reports, policies, pitches, narratives. All of them are different documents, different units of communication that a data communicator needs to practice. Each one of them has a purpose. Audience analysis refines that purpose. For example, reports aim to explain and justify. So, audience analysis determines the depth of that explanation. How much should you explain? How much should you justify? That is the purpose of a report. But the audience analysis helps you regulate the extent to which you will explain or justify something. Let's take another example. Policies. They aim to guide action. But the audience analysis, it determines the framing of that action. It only helps you become a better communicator to know how to respond to your audience's mental model. The third example, pitches. They aim to persuade, and the audience analysis in that case determines the emphasis. Should you emphasize on data? Should you emphasize on the logic behind that analysis? Or should you emphasize on the emotions? Depending on who is on the other end of that channel of communication, you will be able to design the persuasion in a lot more conscious manner. Let's look at an example. Let's assume that a clean energy startup in Gujarat wrote a technical report for engineers. This one contained efficiency curves and assumptions. They also wrote a pitch for local officials. This one contained jobs created, cost savings for households. These two documents are based on the same data ecosystem. However, their style of writing is different. Each one is effective for its own audience. That is how knowing your audience helps you augment the way that you are communicating. Here's a question for you. Reflect on which document type do you find the hardest to write? Why might audience clarity help in making sure that your difficulties with writing that document are alleviated? Let's now look at some other principles that we touched upon: clarity, conciseness, and precision. We learned that clarity, conciseness, and precision, they are core writing qualities. Audience analysis in this case explains why they work. Clarity matches the audience's vocabulary and expectations. Conciseness respects the audience's time and decision pressure. Precision builds trust for audiences who need accuracy to act. Here's how they are causally linked. Audience constraints lead to writing choices. They determine what to include and what to omit. It is dependent on both the principles of clarity, conciseness, and precision, as well as audience analysis. Here's an example. Let's think of a mobility report in Bengaluru. For planners, this will deliver precise metrics. For example, average wait time that is reduced by 22%. On the other hand, for citizens, it will have clear takeaways. For example, shorter waits during peak hours. The citizens may not be so interested in the percentage measure precisely. They will be more attuned to impact. They will be more concerned about clarity. So, precision for planners, clarity and conciseness for citizens. Depending on who the audience is, you end up emphasizing the quality of writing. Let's test this with an exercise. Rewrite this sentence for a non-technical reader. Mean commute time decreased with statistically significant variance. Think about a non-technical audience member, a non-technical reader. How would you change this? What would you change in it? Think back to our conversations about the regulators that you can turn around to make sure that your writing fits the audience's requirements. We also emphasized quite significantly on reader centric writing. Reader centric writing asks, what does the reader need first? In this case, audience analysis is in fact the key. It provides the answer to what reader centric writing looks like. Essentially, all that we have discussed so far is in some way associated with reader centric writing. Remember, we discussed that ordering of information: what, how, and why? That ordering works because it mirrors how the audience decides. Actionable insights emerge when writing anticipates the reader's questions. You must think about what must be going on in the reader's mind while they are reading your writing. If you do that, it ends up corresponding directly with their thought pattern and responding to their curiosities at every step. Here's how it is causally linked. Audience questions lead to structure, and structure provides enough grounding for persuasion. Audience analysis also distinguishes the roles of who your reader is. What kind of functions do they play? Are they a technical reader? Do they have a managerial function? Or are they part of a community? Writing adapts the arguments accordingly. It helps in augmenting the fine nuances that you will bring to the table while addressing the specific functionary role that your reader plays. For example, technical stakeholders, they value validity and limitations, while non-technical stakeholders value implications and feasibility. Here's how all of this is also causally linked. Stakeholder concerns lead to claims, evidence, and warrants. This is what I mean by it. From the introduction module, we learned that not all data belongs in every document. From the audience analysis module, we also learned that relevance depends on who reads. So, audience priorities leads to data selection, and data selection leads to the strength of a story. Here's what that looks like in an example. A financial inclusion story in Uttar Pradesh. Let's assume that it used adoption rates and cohort trends for analysts when they were the readers, while household saving stories and maps for community leaders when they were the audience members. The story traveled further because the data matched the audience. Let's have a quick reflection question before we move forward. What data would you remove for your audience? Think about the audience that you're addressing and ask yourself, what data would you remove for your audience and why? It'll help you achieve clarity in determining the utility of each data point when you select it. Introductory principles that we studied in the first module, they give you the how, while the second module, audience analysis, gives you for whom. Together, they give you why it works. When writing choices are driven by audience insight, data turns into decisions. This is how you bring it all together and turn that into a synthetic understanding, an understanding born out of synthesis between Module 1 and Module 2. They are not separate pieces of information that just happen to be part of a course on writing for data science. They are in fact causally linked just like we saw today. In the next lecture, we will look at modules 2 and 3. They are also causally linked. They also have this conversation with each other. They also end up influencing decisions that we take when we write. This, once again, is an effort to establish that all that we have studied are not information points in isolation. They are all a connected narrative that help us become better data communicators. So, in the next lecture, part 2 of the synthesis series, we will look at the conversations between Module 2, audience analysis, and Module 3, critical thinking and logical reasoning. Until then, stay curious, keep learning. All the best. Thank you so much for joining today. Namaskar.